Hey guys, in this lesson we would factor trinomials where the leading coefficient, that is a value, is not equal to 1. We know a trinomial standard or general equation looks like ax squared plus bx plus c. So in this specific lesson we would deal with those trinomials for which a has a value, and we're going to change this trinomial to bracket form. That is the factored form. Let's take up the first example. Let's say we have to factor a very simple trinomial 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. Now we notice here that a value is not equal to 1. So what is the first step? Is multiply a and c. A is this, c is this. For this example, it's 2 times 3, which is 6. We basically have to get the product AC in the first step. Step number 2 is split the product AC into two numbers whose sum is the B value and the product is AC itself. In this example, the product that we got in step 1, that is AC, is 6. So we have to split this up into two numbers whose sum should be the B value. B value we're looking for is 5. And the product should be AC itself, and that is 6. So the two numbers that we've got is this, 2 and 3. Step number 3 is use the two numbers obtained in step 2 to split the middle term, and the middle term is bx. So the two numbers that we have obtained in step number 2 is 2 and 3. The question that we had originally was 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. Now we would be using these two numbers to split this middle term bx into these two numbers. So the first term would come as is 2x squared. Second term 5x is going to be written as 2x plus 3x using these two numbers. And the third term, that is c value, is 3, would come as is. So the middle term is split up into two number terms that we have obtained from step 2. Step 4 is to factor step 3 result using grouping. Grouping is already explained in one of the previous videos. Let's see how it's done here. So the result that is obtained in step 3 is 2x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 3. We would group the first two terms and the last two terms, and we would factor out the common factor, which is 2x in the first term. So we are left with x plus 1 plus, here we have a common factor of 3. In the bracket we have x plus 1. Now we know these are the two new terms out of which x plus 1 is common. So we are left with 2x plus 3 for the second term, and this is how we change the standard form to factored form. The result we have obtained is x plus 1 to x plus 3. So this can be written in factored form as x plus 1 to x plus 3. Let's take another example for the sake of practice. Let's say now we have to factor 4x squared minus 11x plus 6. Step number 1 is we would find out the product of AC. That is 4 times 6, which is 24. Next is we would split up 24 into two numbers. That would give us a sum of B value, and B value that we are looking for is negative 11. So we know 24 factors are 8 and 3. The product that we are looking for, so this is the sum that we are looking for. The product that we are looking for is AC, which is 24, and this is a positive 24, whereas the sum that we are looking for is a negative 11. If we add a positive 8 and a positive 3, we would not be able to get a negative 11. That means this should be a negative 8 and a negative 3, because when we add a negative 8 and a negative 3, we would get a negative 11. And when we multiply the two negative numbers, we would get a positive 24. So these three numbers are true to our requirements. Next step is we would use the step 2 numbers to split the middle term here. So the first term 4x squared would come as is. Last term 6 would come as is. Negative 11x would be split up as negative 8x, negative 3x. Fourth step is we would solve this by grouping because we are left with the 4 terms now. We group the first two and the last two terms. Out of this we have 4x common. So we are left with x minus 2. Here we are left with 3 as a common number. Here we have 3 as a common factor. Because we are taking negative 3 as a common factor, we need to make sure our signs are our signs are placed correctly. So we have negative 3 out, x is left from here. 6 divided by negative 3 is a negative 2. We need to make sure that the brackets have exact same terms and exact same signs, and that we have. Now from the first term, x minus 2 is common. Now this is the first term and this is the second term. Out of the both terms, we have x minus 2 common. We would place that outside and we are left with 4x minus 3. So the final answer is x minus 2, 4x minus 3. And this is how we change this standard trinomial to this factored form. Let's take another type of example. Here we have two variables. Let's say we have to solve 6c square minus 7cd minus 10d square. Steps are same. It's just that we have to work with two variables c and d. So step number 1 we have to do is just take the product of the number values. So 6 times negative 10 is a negative 60. Step number 2 is we have to split AC, which is negative 60, into two numbers such that we get a sum of negative 7 and we get a product of negative 60 back again. Because the product is negative, that means one of the numbers would be positive and the other numbers would be negative. We know 60 has lots and lots of factors such as 2 and 30. However, working with 2 and 30, we will never be able to get 7, neither by adding nor by subtracting. Another factor of 60 if we take is 10 and 6. So if we add 10 and 6, we would be able to get 16, whereas when we subtract it, we would be able to get a 4. That means this does not work. Another factor we can use is 12 and 5. Now here we notice that when we add 12 and 5, we get a 17, whereas when we subtract 12 and 5, we get a 7. Therefore, the two numbers that give us a 7 would be 12 and 5. Since we have to subtract these two numbers, that means one of the numbers is going to have a negative sign. Now, which number is going to have a negative sign is decided by the sign of the sum. We want a negative sign in the sum value. So, the bigger number will have a negative sign and the smaller number would have a positive sign. Now, just to check if these numbers are correct, negative 12 positive 5 give us a negative 7, and that's correct for the sum. Negative 12 multiplied by positive 5 give us a negative 60, and that is correct for the product that we are looking for. So these are the two numbers that we have obtained. Next we have is step number 3. Now we have to split the middle term, that is this term. So we would rewrite the question first. 6c square minus 7cd minus 10d square. First and the last terms would come as is. We have 6c square and we have a minus 10d square. The middle term, that is negative 7cd, is going to be split up into negative 12cd and positive 5cd. Always remember that if the variable is cd, the variable is going to be cd for each of these numbers as well. The variable comes down with both of these numbers. Step number 4 is we have to group and solve it now. So we are factoring by grouping. We have 6c square minus 12cd plus 5cd minus 10d square, and we group the first two terms and the last two terms. In the first two terms, we see 6c is common. Take that out as common. We are left with c minus 2d. In the last two terms, we are left with 5d common. For the first term, we are left with c minus 2d. We notice here these two are exactly same terms. So we'll take out c minus 2d common and we are left with 6c plus 5d in the second bracket. And this is how we change this form to this factored form. C minus 2d, 6c plus 5d. Let's factor this last example. Now what is different in this example than the previous examples is that sometimes a question can be simplified by taking out a common factor out of all of these terms. We know 10, 15 and 10, they are all multiples of 5. So what we can do is we can rewrite the question by taking that 5 common out of this entire question. So we are left with 2x squared plus 3x minus 2. Now what we would have to do is we would just have to work with these small numbers of the trinomial to factor it, because this one number has already been factored out, leaving with small numbers in the trinomial. Now we can apply the similar steps. First step is product of AC. A is 2, C is -2. We get a -4. Second step is we think of two numbers that AC can be splitted up. So the two numbers would be 4 and 1, because the sum that we are looking for is a +3 and the product that we are looking for is a -4. However, which of these is going to be positive and which of these is going to be negative is decided by this sign. We want a +3, so the bigger number is going to be positive, smaller number is going to be negative. Now when we add +4 and -1, we get a +3 sum, and when we multiply +4 and -1, we get a -4 product. Third step is we split the middle term using these two numbers. So we are left with 2x squared from the first term. Next is 4x minus 1x, that's from this 3x minus 2. Step number 4 is to factor using grouping. So we're going to group the first two and the last two terms. We can put this in a big bracket, square bracket now. So we're left with 2x squared plus 4x minus 1x minus 2, and then we just have to factor it. From the first bracket we have 2x common. Always make sure that this number that was taken out as a common factor out of the entire question has to always stay there. So here 2x is common. We are left with x plus 2 minus, here nothing is common means 1 is common. We are left with x and then -2 divided by -1 is a +2. Now how do we write on the final answer is, we have x plus 2 common in both of these terms, and from here we have 2x minus 1. And this is our final answer in this type of a question.